Hi friends, and welcome to From Amateur to Expert, where we talk about work, wealth, and how to position yourself as a top name in your industry. Today let's talk about that last one, becoming and remaining a top name, an icon, the Schwarzenegger of bodybuilding, the Oprah of television, the Elon Musk of outer space. Folks, the other day I had a chance to present for a group of people who have found that they are using different technologies every year. With the COVID lockdowns, of course, everything has been incredibly disrupted, and they have gone from meeting with people live and doing a certain style of presentation to everything on certain platforms and then changing the platforms and so forth. And I shared with them an idea that the feedback I received was they found this idea quite inspiring in the sense that it's actually a comforting notion of simplicity. And that is that it's not about the technology. The other day, I'm driving along in my car and I'm listening to an old BBC comedy show. Of the thousands of people subscribed to this channel, probably 1.5 have ever heard of it. It's called The Goon Show, and it's an old, bizarre BBC comedy show. And in this one particular episode, a lion escapes from a zoo in London, and one of the characters says to another character, "Quick, call David Attenborough." And of course, I'm attuned to this idea of icons and experts and the names that stand out in any industry. But something jumped out at me about that one, and I thought, how old is this broadcast? And I went and I had a look, and it turned out that that show was broadcast in 1957. At first I couldn't believe it. I thought, he can't possibly be old enough to have been the animal icon in 1957. Now I went and had a look, and it turned out it was absolutely true. Now of course at that point in time, even television was a relatively new phenomenon, and a lot of what he was doing was print journalism and reporting over the radio and so forth. I mean, very sort of entry-level stuff. And yet today, in the 2020s, if you go and turn on BBC World, you will still hear Sir David Attenborough's voice saying things like, "And the penguin approaches his mate across the ice." And fully half of the nature documentaries you see will be by Sir David Attenborough. And what's interesting about that is that the technology has changed radically over the decades. Now imagine a scenario in which in the 1960s, David Attenborough had looked at the new technology around him, the new style of cameras, and said, well, that's not really for me. I've been doing it this way for the past 10 years. But he didn't. He simply adopted that technology to focus on the thing that he loves and that he's good at. And he becomes like a steady theme traveling through time, with the technology adapting around him and everything changing around him, but he doesn't get caught up in that. Imagine if in the 1970s or the 1980s he'd started observing these HD cameras, underwater cameras, satellites, drones, and thinking, well, that's all terribly complicated and not for me. And yet he didn't. He simply used all the newest technology to do the thing that makes him iconic. So folks, it's a bit of a comforting thought in a sense that strip away the strange new tech, the weird platforms, the unusual scenarios that we have to face this year, and ask yourself a much simpler question. Who am I, and what am I brilliant at? What do I love? What's the thing that I do in the world? Of course the tech will change over time. It will never stop changing. But the tech is not the point. It is completely incidental, and we miss something when we focus so greatly on the tech that we think that is our career. It isn't. You, the iconic expert, are the theme traveling through time. You simply use the latest tools as they come along. And over the decades, you build up a reputation by which people start to say, you know who you should talk to about that? And your name appears at the end of that sentence. That's what we're after.